that we consider to be the foundation stone of our recovery. The book Alcoholics Anonymous is the textbook in the fellowship, and it contains the directions of how to recover from the disease of alcoholism. It discloses to us a spiritual remedy and a practical program of action to put that spiritual remedy into action into our lives. And there's a couple of promises that are made about that. If you'd like to turn to forward in the book 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, in the third paragraph, it says AA's 12 steps are a group of principles, spiritual in their nature, which, if practiced as a way of life, can expel the obsession to drink and enable the sufferer to become happily and usefully whole. So it's telling me there that if I will accept these spiritual principles and practice them as a way of life, which is in direct conflict or directly opposite of the way I have been living my life as a practicing alcoholic, and I'll be able to live my life sober one day at a time, and I will also become a happy and usefully whole human being, something I have never been. I've always had a piece missing out of me, multiple pieces at many times, and never have I been whole in my life. If some area of my life was going well, there was always a fractured piece laying off to the side somewhere, and I just changed those around as I saw fit, trying to live this life of self-will that I had learned through practicing the disease of alcoholism, running around with a bad case of untreated alcoholism until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. As I said, this is the textbook, the book of directions. The book 12 Steps and 12 Traditions is commentary on the directions which are in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. You cannot recover from the disease of alcoholism by reading exclusively the book 12 Steps and 12 Traditions. It's the same thing as reading a review of a movie in the newspaper. You may know something about the movie, but you still haven't been there to see it. It's a good companion piece to the book, big book, but it does not contain any directions. It's merely a group of essays, which are in most cases random thoughts on the steps. There's a lot of good information in there, and I value it, and I use it in my own life, and I use it in sponsoring other people. But I always have to go back to the book Alcoholics Anonymous to find out what I am supposed to be doing to practice these principles. Next, I would like to talk a little bit about the difference between the program and the fellowship. I know that I had a lot of confusion about what was what and what meant what, and you hear people saying, well, I'm in the program, and you hear very little talk about people saying, I'm in the fellowship. And I would like to explain what my idea is, the difference between the program and the fellowship. If you turn to the first page of Chapter 2, there is a solution, which is on page 17 in the big book. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. We are average Americans. All sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are a people who normally would not mix. And if you look around any meeting that you go to, you can easily see that you're sitting in a group of people that you normally wouldn't come in contact with. Now, I have many friends in this fellowship that are a lot younger than me. And other than Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't come into contact with many young people in my business life, in my neighborhood, and certainly not a way where I can form a deep and relationship with them. I don't have a lot of opportunities to come in contact with people that are in different areas, different occupations than me, et cetera, different economic backgrounds. But we're a people that mix together because we're alcoholic, and it gives me some opportunities to grow because of the diversity of the people that are in this fellowship. As we are a people who normally would not mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We are like the passengers of a great liner the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade from the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. And what they're talking about here, in ocean travel was the primary means of travel overseas at this time, when the book was written. And he's drawing, Bill's drawing an analogy between being shipwrecked at sea and the fellowship. If you're shipwrecked at sea, it doesn't make any difference whether you're wealthy or whether you're poverty-stricken. If everybody's in the water, it's in my best interest to help you save your life, and it's in your best interest to help me save my life. And if we were all out in a lifeboat together, it wouldn't make any difference where you worked or what your background was in any area. We would probably form some pretty good relationships just because of the nature of the circumstances. We'd share water, we'd share food, we'd take care of each other. And once we were rescued and we got to the dock, we'd hug each other and say how wonderful it was, I finally met you. And then somebody would leave in their Cadillac and another person would leave in their horse-drawn conveyance, others would walk off, and probably we'd never see each other again. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. So when we were in the lifeboat, we faced a common peril, and we developed these relationships. But what brings us to the fellowship is the common peril we face as alcoholics, death, insanity, or incarceration from the disease. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. That brings us here, but that isn't going to keep us here. Just the fact that we face a common peril. It says the tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. So the powerful cement, the more powerful cement that binds us here is this search for the common solution that we each in our own way commit to when we become a member of this fellowship. And physical presence in this fellowship, our physical presence does not make a person a member of this fellowship. You become a member of this fellowship, number one, by being an alcoholic and expressing a desire to stop drinking in accordance with the third tradition. And number two, by making a commitment to yourself, not to anyone else, a commitment to yourself to pursue this common solution, to work to find this common solution, put it into action in your own life, just like I did. And there's a lot of people that come to Alcoholics Anonymous and they sit here and they think that they are in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous, and they are not in pursuit of the solution. And because they're not in the fellowship, they're not pursuing the solution, they leave and they go get drunk. Many of them are fortunate enough to make it back, many are not. But being a member is a state of mind. It is a commitment to self. That I'm defeated and I want to get better. There's many people that are in this fellowship that have not been fortunate to sit in a gathering like this. People who live their life at sea, people who live in remote areas of the world, people who are invalids. But they're as much a member of this fellowship as someone sitting at this table if they are in pursuit of this common solution. And Bill, back in chapter 11, on page 152, in the first complete paragraph, he discloses to us why it is important to become a member of this fellowship. It says, "We have shown how we got out from under. You say, yes, I am willing, but am I to be consigned to a life where I shall be stupid, boring, and glum, like some righteous people I see? I know I must get along without liquor, but how can I? Have you a sufficient substitute?" The book tells me, and we're going to talk about it in a few minutes, that I cannot not drink because I am an alcoholic. There's something wrong with me that compels me to consume alcohol. So the only way that I can not consume alcohol is to have a sufficient substitute. And Bill says, yes, there is a substitute, and it is vastly more than that. It is a fellowship in Alcoholics Anonymous. There you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Life will mean something at last. The most satisfactory years of your existence lies ahead. Thus we find the fellowship, and so will you. So there is the fellowship, which is us, each with our own commitment to finding the common solution to the peril that we face. The program is those lifeless things hanging on the wall up there, numbered 1 through 12. They have absolutely no meaning until you become a member of this fellowship. If the fellowship wasn't important, if you had problem with alcohol, you could write into some P.O. box somewhere in New York and they could send you some information back out and you could read it and digest it and go about your business and the problem would be over. The fellowship empowers me to start to learn and to practice these principles that are called the 12 steps. It gives me some identity in my life. It gives me a way to see that I am not unique. It gives me a way to see that other people share with me my experiences and my feelings. And it gives me gratitude I can always come into a room and I can say, yeah, I think this disease pounded me to pieces. But it was harder on him, or it was harder on her. I get a lot of things from the fellowship. And the basic thing that starts it all is the feeling of power that I can draw from the group. That I'm not alone anymore. And I can do these things because other people before me have done them. And I know that I can get the results that they're telling me I can get because I can see that other people have gotten the results. I also like to say that there's a lot of things written about the disease of alcoholism and recovering therefrom. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. I found none of it to be harmful. I would be foolish to say that I've read most of it. I haven't, but I've read as much as I have been able to. One thing I have not done, though, is when I am reading something outside of the program, I do not allow myself to get off on tangents. I take the information and see how it relates back to what I am being taught in the book Alcoholics Anonymous and in the fellowship, and how I can improve my understanding of what I'm trying to do and why I am trying to do it. So the big book is the foundation of all of the reading that I do on the subject of alcoholism. And also I read things about human behavior, and I have a vast library on that, all of which I acquired before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous when I was searching for a solution to my dilemma. And although it was all giving me good information, I was not in a position to use it because I had no way to use it like I have a way here in the fellowship to use this information. And I still remember a lot of it, a lot of what I've read over the years. And it's valuable to me. Anytime you have an opportunity to learn, take it. Make time each day to learn, but always remember what the foundation stone is, because you're an alcoholic if you're sitting here listening to me tonight. I'd like to talk a little bit now about the twofold nature of the disease. On page Roman numeral 24 in the front in the doctor's opinion. Before we get started reading there, let's talk a little bit about what a disease is, and I want to say that I'm certainly a layman on this subject, but what I've been able to understand very simply is that a disease is a set of symptoms which defines a syndrome. And I'm not sure what a syndrome is, but it sounds nice. But it is a set of symptoms that defines an illness. And there are a lot of symptoms in any one disease, all of which may not be present at any one time. For example, in the case of measles, if we both had measles, you may have a temperature of 102 and I may have a temperature of 101, and you may have 37 spots and I may have 137 spots. So there will be a lot of differences between the physical manifestations in our respective cases of measles, but the doctor, when he looks at both of us, he would both say, you both have the measles, even though there's a lot of differences. And that little piece of information is valuable when I start thinking that, well, maybe I'm not an alcoholic because that never happened to me. You know, I still have the disease of alcoholism, even though I maybe didn't have all of the symptoms. What on page 20, Roman numeral 24, this letter was written by, we're going to be reading in a letter written by Dr. William D. Silkworth, who was the physician at Towns Hospital in New York City, where Bill Wilson went for treatment for alcoholism several times. This hospital in which he had his spiritual awakening. That's discussed in Bill's story, chapter 1 of this book. It says, a physician who at our request gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as his mind. It did not satisfy us to be told that we could not control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. Now notice that it says it did not satisfy us to be told that we were maladjusted to life, that we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. It doesn't say that we weren't those things. It says it just didn't satisfy us, because it didn't explain to us things that we knew were happening to us. These things were true to some extent, in fact to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, that picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to its soundness may, of course, mean little. But as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains many things for which we cannot otherwise account. Dr. Silkworth was one of the pioneers in the treatment in the field of alcoholism, and without any medical or scientific evidence, Dr. Silkworth had concluded that alcoholics suffered from a physical allergy to alcohol. The doctor was right on target. There's, in the last 10, 15, 20 years, there has been a lot of good solid research on the disease of alcoholism. It's only been accepted by the American Medical Association as a disease since 1955. As you may or may not know, there is a lot of sentiment in society at large that it may not very well be a disease, because on the outside it looks like there's a lot of willful misconduct involved. But medical science is very rapidly proving that there is some very sound evidence that we behave in a way that is dictated to us by a disease, and willful misconduct has very little to do with it. This allergy that the doctor is talking about has been explained medically, and very briefly I'll explain it to the best of my ability, which is limited in this area. But it seems that when a person drinks alcohol, when a so-called normal person drinks alcohol, this is what happens. You put some alcohol in your stomach and the blood starts to break it, or your digestive system starts to break it down, starts to enter the bloodstream is what I'm trying to say. And the pancreas starts to secrete some enzymes that are used in the liver to break down alcohol. The alcohol is first broken down by the liver into diacetic acid, then into acetaldehyde, then into acetone, then into hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, whatever basic elements may be in the alcohol molecule, and I'm not sure what those are. I know it's a radical carbon molecule, and I'm not even sure what that means. Nevertheless, that's what happens in a normal drinker. In an alcoholic, there is a defective liver or a defective pancreas present. And when we drink, the pancreas secretes some enzymes and the liver starts breaking down. It goes, alcohol is converted to diacetic acid, acetaldehyde, and then into acetone. And that's where the problem occurs. Our pancreases do not secrete enzymes in sufficient quantity or quality, apparently, to break down the acetone as rapidly as it is broken down in a normal person, or a person who has a normal pancreas. A buildup of acetone in the body creates a craving for more acetone. The craving for acetone is satisfied by the compulsive consumption of alcohol, who to normal people conclude is willful misconduct. For years, I dreaded every drink I took because I knew the consequences that were coming. I knew that I would get drunk once I started to drink, yet I was compelled. A compulsion is an irresistible urge to commit an irrational act. I did not become an alcoholic because of the way I drank. I drank the way I drank because I was alcoholic. There is research that concludes that the disease is hereditary. That has been a rather obvious fact for a number of years. That they had not spent the time to prove scientifically. It does run in families. It does run in ethnic groups. It does run in races. If you are of Northern European ancestry, Irish ancestry, tropical African ancestry, or American Indian ancestry, the odds are that you were born with a genetic predisposition to alcoholism. That does not say that because you were born with a genetic exposure, that you will become an active alcoholic and drink in alcoholic drinking patterns. However, you are at risk. It's much like diabetes, which is also a pancreas disorder. My wife is the daughter of a diabetic. There is a 1 in 4 chance that she will become a diabetic in her lifetime. She has not yet. She may never, but she is genetically at risk. They know a lot more about diabetes today than they do about alcoholism, and they can quote statistics and odds with a little more certainty. I am also to a great extent driven by my environment. We live in a drinking society. However, that doesn't seem to be of overwhelming importance. There are a lot of drinking societies where alcoholism doesn't seem to be a problem. It may not be unknown, or it may not be unknown, but it is not an overwhelming problem. The Mediterranean people, for example, do not seem to be born with this genetic predisposition. Yet the Italians certainly have a drinking society. The Greeks do. Yeah, please. And there is alcoholism in those societies, but certainly not with the magnitude that the other risk groups have. You know, the Middle East people, the desert people, it's virtually unknown. The Asians don't seem to be troubled by it. You know, they all have their own peculiar set of problems. But you know, as concerns alcoholism, the groups that I've mentioned seem to be troubled most. And also, when I speak of American Indians, that's American Indians meaning North and South America. You know, all the indigenous populations of the two continents, which basically came from the same racial stock. You know, some were more enterprising and liked to walk more than others. I can't imagine walking from the Bering Sea to the tip of South America. But if you only move a couple of miles each generation, I guess it wouldn't be much of a walk. So I have those are some basic that's some basic information on what we know about the disease of alcoholism today. If you turn to page 20, Roman numeral 26, we'll see what the doctor has to say about this allergy. It says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed the habit, and I disagree with that word habit there, the doctor probably wouldn't use that word habit in light of what is known today, but he does say, once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. Going on down to the bottom paragraph there, says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. And I don't know what kind of effect you got from alcohol, but the effect I got from it was that it made me feel okay. The people that were coming after me went away when I started drinking alcohol. You know, I didn't know who they were, I didn't know where they were, and I didn't know when they were coming, but I knew they were there. And when I started to drink alcohol, all the boogeymen in my life went away, and I felt all right. And it worked for me that way for a long time. And then it started creating its own boogeymen once I started to drink, and they wouldn't go away. It says the sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. And this sensation that the doctor's talking about is this feeling of I'm okay. You know, once I found it with that first drink, that first drunk, that first, when at the onset of alcohol, and I thought, good Lord, I found something magic here. Once I found that, I was never really able to reproduce it again. And I always remembered what it felt like, and I was always searching for that same sensation. I never really got it back again. I could get close maybe, but, I said, well, maybe if I drink 2 drinks, I can get close, and I'd drink 2 drinks. I said, no, that ain't it. And I'd drink 2 more, and by the time the first 2 caught up to produce the sensation I wanted, it was too late because I was roaring on past it like a freight train. And I knew it was injurious. I knew that I was doing something that I shouldn't be doing. But it says that after time I couldn't differentiate the true from the false, because I had to continually lie to myself to allow myself to do something that I had no control over anyway. So it says back in chapter 11 that after a while I become bewildered and frustrated. I become terrorized. And I suffer from acute despair. I have no hope that I can direct my life anymore. And I have to tell myself lies that I'm okay. My life's falling down around me, but I'm okay. I can handle it if it doesn't get any worse than this. Whoops. Another wall fell out of the house. What am I gonna, if it doesn't get any worse than this, I can handle it. Give me another drink. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. Drinks that I see other people take, and there's no harm. They can have their alcohol and enjoy it and go about their business and not cause themselves or other people problems. After they have succumbed to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of his recovery. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once a psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being not required to follow a few simple rules. And I'm in here to learn these few simple rules, and I have to come back because I can't remember them. I have to stay in this fellowship, and I have to be told what the few simple rules are every day of my life, or I will forget them. And once again, I will seem doomed. And this word psychic change is a word that Dr. Silkworth used, which is interchangeable with spiritual experience, spiritual awakening, personality change, vital spiritual experience, religious experience. It's this rearrangement of the things that are going on in my life by working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm about to run out of time here. Let's go to page 20. This is a little discussion of what the real alcoholic is, and the paragraph that starts, "How many times have people said to us, 'I can take it or leave it alone. Why can't he? Why can't you drink like a gentleman or quit? That fellow can't handle his liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl, I'd think he'd stop for her sake. The doctor told him that if he ever drank again, it would kill him now. But there he is, all lit up again.'" Now, these are commonplace observations on drinkers, which we hear all the time. Back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. We see that these expressions refer to people whose reactions are very different from ours. Moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely if they have good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can also stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome, and may even need medical attention. But what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. Let's go to page 23 here. Down at the bottom, the sentence, paragraph that starts, "The tragic truth." And once again, they're talking about why can't these people, why can't we wake up and see what in the world is happening to them? And it says the tragic truth is that if the man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. He has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is absolutely of no avail. And people who have not been trapped in this cannot understand this. Just like when I ask someone who has a painful illness, disease, had some painful surgery, when I ask them, what does it feel like? And they tell me, I don't have a hell of a lot more information than I had before they told me, because I don't know what it feels like. And you can't explain this to a person who does not suffer from this disease, what it is like not to be able to stop something you don't want to do. This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case before it is suspected. I was under the illusion that I was drinking because I enjoyed it for a number of years, and I said to myself over and over, if it ever starts to cause me any trouble, like it caused my dad, like it caused Uncle Edwin, like it caused Uncle Bob, like it caused Uncle Kurt, like it caused etc., I'll just quit. And I thought that I was having a good time. And I was. But somewhere in there, I lost the ability to quit. I may have had it at one time. I don't know. But I never was able to find out. Because when it started getting bad, I couldn't back up. I couldn't go back. It says that the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink, and some of those reasons are as obscure today as they were when this book was written. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. The almost certain consequences that follows taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. There is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his
and that was my opinion. But if you think something in there applies to you, then do something with it. If it doesn't, then it's all the same. Now, the disease. I want to talk about what the result of this disease is, and it's hard to get a handle on it. The economic loss from the disease of alcoholism in this country is absolutely staggering. The amount of social trouble it's caused in this country is absolutely staggering. And I don't know who to believe on what subject regarding what the physical toll is of this disease, but I've read anywhere from 200,000 to 400,000 people die as a result of the disease of alcoholism annually, which makes it one of the major killers in this country. Problem that they have is the death certificates record heart failure, ruptured esophagus, liver failure, pancreas failure, flat feet, warts on the face as causes of death when it's the disease of alcoholism, and you very seldom see that on death certificates. So they have to make a lot of estimates about the cause of death. But also the causes of death are gunshot wounds, stab wounds, frying pans over the head in the middle of the night. That was my wife's favorite way to kill me. She used to be in the Al-Anon program. She made amends to me for that. Automobile accidents, suicide, hit over the head with bar stools, And it isn't always the alcoholic that gets killed by this disease. There's a lot of innocent people that die from the disease of alcoholism that don't have it, but it kills them just as sure as somebody that drinks themselves to death. Let's go to page 20, Roman numeral 26, in the doctor's opinion. That's XXVI. For you people who graduated from elementary school after 1950 and they stopped teaching that. There in the first paragraph it says, good heavens. It says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. That the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all, and once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, and the doctor here is calling it a habit, and I don't believe that in light of present circumstances he would call it a habit. Formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve. So Dr. Silkworth, who was the doctor that treated Bill Wilson and thousands of other alcoholics in Towns Hospital in New York, has come to the conclusion, by treating alcoholics without any medical or any scientific type confirmation back in the 1930s, that something's wrong in the body of these people who seemingly don't want to quit drinking. And there's a little more information available today about what the nature of this allergy is. And those of you who have heard Gary Friedrichs speak from the Big Book have heard this before, and I give him full credit for it because I don't know that it's right, and if it's wrong, I don't want to be blamed. But I'm sure Gary's facts are straight, and if I can repeat them as eloquently as he does, then I'll be right too. The allergy is simply this: that when a normal person drinks, the alcohol goes into the system, into the bloodstream. The pancreas secretes enzymes that go into the liver. The liver is responsible for breaking down all toxins. Toxin means poison. That's where the term intoxicated came from. It means we poisoned ourselves. The liver breaks down the alcohol so that eventually it may be eliminated from our body. And the first thing that happens is that it is converted to diacetic acid. Then it is converted to acetaldehyde, then it's converted to acetone, and then into hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and whatever elements are involved in the molecule of alcohol, and it's expelled from our body. That's it. That's what happens in a normal drinker. And what Gary says is that in the alcoholic, what happens is we drink, the pancreas works, the liver works, and it goes to diacetic acid, to acetaldehyde. But when it gets to the acetone stage, our livers do not secrete enzymes in sufficient quantity and quality to allow the liver to break down the acetone. When the body has a buildup of acetone, then a craving is created for more acetone. The quickest way to get more acetone is to drink more alcohol. So the craving phenomenon that Dr. Silkworth was talking about has been proved to be a medical fact. He just had a suspicion that something was wrong. He couldn't explain it. So the problem then is I have a defective body. You know, to be human is imperfect, is to be imperfect. You know, it's just a matter of finding out where I'm imperfect and how do I deal with it. But the allergy really doesn't make any difference. You know, I have the allergy right now. It's not bothering me. It doesn't make any difference. You know, I have an allergy to mold. But it's not bothering me right now because there's not any mold in here. You know, if you open a 6-week-old loaf of bread, I'll sneeze for you, though. You know, I can do that. But there isn't any 6-week-old bread in here, so even though I have that allergy, it's really not bothering me. You know, so we got some other problems to talk about. Let's go to page. Where am I? Let's go to page 20. I like this, and this kind of doesn't hang together here, but I want to read it, and this is a good place for any to read it. It says, how many times, down in the second paragraph, how many times people have said to us, I can take it or leave it alone. Why can't he? Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? That fellow can't handle his liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl. I think he'd stop for her sake. Oh, yeah. The doctor told him that if he ever drank again, it would kill him, but there he is all lit up again. Let the good times roll. Now, these are commonplace observations on drinkers, which we hear all the time. Back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. We see that these expressions refer to people whose reactions are very different from us. Moderate drinkers have little trouble giving up liquor entirely if they have good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. You know, my sister, who I said doesn't have any problem with alcohol whatsoever, was drinking 4 ounces of wine every evening after dinner and before she went to bed. She got concerned about it. Why, I don't know. She just quit. She says, I don't need to do this. I don't like what I'm doing, so I'm not going to do it anymore. You know, I'd say, good Lord, Ann, if I could drink like a normal person, I'd get drunk every night. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can also stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention. You know, this guy, he's not an alcoholic. He just drinks like one. Now, he may very well have addicted himself to alcohol. Only non-alcoholics, in my opinion, can addict themselves to alcohol. And he's impaired his health with his drinking habits. I had a heart attack when I was 36 years old. The doctor said I wouldn't live through the night. He thought I had something wrong with me. He didn't know what. He says, oh my, I think you have heart disease. And I didn't know what I had, but anyway, I woke up alive the next morning, and he started talking to me and trying to see what was going on in my life. And he says, how much do you drink? And I knew he was getting close to something there. He wouldn't ask the question, so I decided to lie to him. And I said, well, I drink a pint a day. He says, oh my gracious. And I thought, what in the hell is wrong with this man? I thought a pint was a... He says, well, you got to cut that out. That's killing you. Well, I was drinking better than a quart a day. He says, if you don't cut that out, you're headed for some real trouble. He says, you almost lost your life on this one. Didn't make any difference to me. Warnings of a doctor didn't make any difference to me. Ill health didn't make any difference to me. Falling in love didn't make any difference to me. I was going with my wife. Good Lord, it's like I courted her. While I was drunk, I was going with my... She was my girlfriend at that time. When I had this heart attack, and I had been repeatedly asking her to marry me, not for good motives, and she had kept refusing. And when I was in the hospital, I said, I think I understand. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. 10 days of it was in cardiac intensive care. And I said, I've been laying here thinking about all this, and I understand now that I've been drinking way too much. Of course, I was on Valium at the time, and I felt pretty good. I said, I think I see what you've been talking about. And I decided that I'm going to quit drinking. Will you marry me now? And she said, yes, I will. So I said, praise God for victory. I finally got out of the hospital. I'd had somebody bring my car, park it in the parking lot. I went out and got in my car, and I stopped at the liquor store on the way home. And when I told my wife I was never going to drink again, or the girl that was going to become my wife that I was never going to drink again, I never said anything that I meant as much as I meant it right then. The doctor had told me that I was going to die. I told a girl that supposedly I was in love with that for her I'd quit drinking, and it meant absolutely nothing. I had no choice in the matter. I went directly to the liquor store and started right back where I left off. But what about the real alcoholic? That's me. He may start off as a moderate drinker. I did. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. I did. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. And what he's talking about there, what Bill's talking about there, is what Dr. Silkworth was talking about, this allergy in the doctor's opinion, that the more that I abuse my body, and as I age, coupled with the abuse, my liver starts to work less, or my pancreas that my liver is depending upon starts to work less efficiently. And because my liver is being overtaxed because of a combination of overdoses of poison and an insufficient supply of enzymes, my liver starts to function at less efficiency. So that when we talk about this as a progressive disease, that's where the progression comes from. In the last stages of my drinking, the allergy was so bad on me, my body was so broken down that I would get drunk, taking the top off of a bottle. Just by knowing that it was coming, I could feel it before I ever took a drink. Of course, I was drinking half a gallon of scotch a day, so I never really was totally sober, but I could feel the effect just knowing a drink was coming. Kind of like Pavlov's dog. On page 23, down at the bottom of the page, it says the tragic truth is that if the man or woman be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. And he's talking about the happy day that will not arrive, that he finally decides to see the error of his way and he'll just give it up like a moderate drinker. It says he has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. This tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected. I thought that I could stop drinking at any time if I ever saw a need to. I used to set up benchmarks which I measured my drinking against. I said that if I ever started drinking at lunch during a work day, I would know I was in trouble and that I would stop drinking. I started drinking at lunch, and then I said if I ever drank more than 2 at lunch, I would stop drinking, and etc., etc. I passed every benchmark that I set up for myself and just went right on through them. And I thought I had a choice in the matter. I told myself, well, doing these things that I said I would never do, now that I'm doing it, they're not as bad as I thought they were, so I really don't have to pay any attention to what I promised myself. In every case, long before it is suspected. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are out without defense against the first drink. The almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. There is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. If people behaved in other matters like alcoholics behave about alcohol, they would be locked up immediately. You got a person running around putting their hand on every hot stove they can find, they're not going to let him run loose. You know, he's a danger to himself. They'll take him off the street. You know, we're not going to put up with this. You're coming to the emergency room every day with another burn, and something's wrong with you, and we're going to fix it. Don't know how long it's going to take or what we're going to have to do with you, but we're not going to put up with this behavior anymore. Not so with alcoholics, you know. But we are without, there is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. I could not help myself. And you know, this is an age-old question. What do we do about a guy that drinks too much? You know, and I'm going to end this tonight with this, but you know, Solomon in the Old Testament, in the Bible, he was a wise man, you know, and he solved many knotty problems, and he came up with solutions to just all kinds of things that troubled people. And in the 23rd chapter of Proverbs, which was written by Solomon and other people, apparently, in about the 10th century, or about 1,000 years before the birth of Christ. He tries to solve the riddle of the person who drinks too much. And it's kind of interesting to read what he has to say. It says, who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has contentions? Who has complaints? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eyes? Those who linger long at the wine. Those who go in search of mixed wines. It says don't drink wine, because at the last it bites like a serpent and stings like a viper. Your eyes will see strange women. They had closing times then too. It could say your eyes will see strange men. And your heart will utter perverse things. You will be like one who lies down in the midst of the sea, or like the one who lies at the top of the mast. You ever had to put your foot on the floor to keep the bed from spinning? Mm-hmm. That's what he's talking about there, I think. They have struck me, but I was not hurt. I was beaten on the side of the road with a 5-cell flashlight by a policeman. It didn't hurt. It didn't hurt a bit. And I had no idea why he was beating me. I was trying to cooperate. But he did have the good sense to handcuff me before he beat me. They have beaten me, but I did not feel it. So Solomon goes through here and he says, this is what's going on with this bunch of people. You can cut them, you can beat them. They complain all the time. Nothing's going right. They're always in arguments. They fight. Well, he can't solve the riddle. All he says is, when they awake, they seek it yet again. That's it. That's all he could come up with. And that's all I could come up with for a number of years. I knew what was going on in my life. I'd sweep it under the rug and I'd go right back at it, one day at a time. Just a different direction back then than it is tonight. All right, so I want to thank you for listening tonight, and we'll continue next week.